here on the Thomas Farm, July 9th, 1864, we are well into the battle at Monocacy Junction here. John McCausland's 1,200 dismounted cavalry had gained a foothold on the south side of the Monocacy River where the Worthington property is, using the Worthington Ford to gain that access.
Right.
They think they have found the flank of the federal forces, U.S. troops, and their expectation is they're about to roll it up nice and tight, like a fruit roll-up, baby.
There you go.
Except what they're really facing here is a force that's ready for them. So again, the expectation, the theme is we're not committing to a general fight because what's in front of us should be brushed off very easily. So moving as they do west to east across the Worthington into the Thomas Farm property, that is still their expectation. Unbeknownst to them, federal troops, U.S. troops, have been ordered by General General James B. Ricketts. His men are told to turn his line and face this threat coming towards them. So we'll see the Union line sort of bend into that right angle type position, and they're going to have themselves planted along a concealed fence line. And this is where the devolvement of the day is really going to start to happen, because Confederate troops are going to march right into a devastating or a withering din of musketry and rifle fire, and they are going to take incredible casualties for a moment. It's basically a punch in the mouth. And they're going to step back and take, as Matt called it, a tactical pause. Essentially, what just happened and figuring out what to do next. I think they're still going to be looking for a way around the Army at this point, Matt. If I'm not mistaken, the expectation, even at this moment, is still we will eventually brush them off. So as we move into the moments after McCausland's stunting, first, what time of day is it? And what happens next?
So this tactical pause is actually going to be something of a significant pause. We're not going to see action on this part of the field heating up again until around 2 p.m. At that point, John McCausland, who has been looking for a way around this federal line, has discovered that the skirmish line out here only stretches so far to the south. And his second attack is going to take advantage of that. Sweeping down around this direction, very close to where the 270 interstate passes over the Baker Valley Road today, Confederate Cavaliers, again dismounted, are going to begin to come around this end of this skirmish line, forcing it to fall back through the Thomas Farm behind you. Now, James Ricketts, he is not going to just allow this to occur. As his skirmishers fall back through the Thomas property, McCausland's men do gain the actual Thomas Farm at this point, but Ricketts is going to rally his troops and counterattack, this time advancing his entire brigade. Understandably so, that is going to force John McCausland out yet a second time, falling back across these fields you see behind us, back again towards Worthington Farm. By this point, Jubal Early has had enough. Things are taking too long. It's getting on towards 3 p.m., and he is going to order forward Confederate infantry, specifically a division of troops under the command of John Brown Gordon. Now, Major General Gordon is a fighting commander. We've already talked about him a little bit during this series of videos. He is going to be moving across the Monocacy River with about 3,500 troops in his division, soldiers from Georgia, Louisiana, and Virginia. His lead brigade is his Georgia Brigade. It is the largest brigade in his division, under the command of Brigadier General Clement Evans. Now, as these troops are going up and over Brooks Hill behind us, this high ground, they're going to go into a long line of battle. And as they are doing so, John McCausland's Confederate cavalry are going to try one more time to break this federal line.
They want the glory. They say, it's not going to be you, it's going to be us.
Right, and so what's going to happen is they're going to go right at this federal line that has now established itself here on Thomas Farm. Ricketts, by this point, has thrown in his other brigade, and he now has his entire division in line across the property.
I was getting ready to say, that is an important detail. This isn't just a portion of the line that was bent around. It is the entire command under James Ricketts at this point. So we're talking 3,000 or so men?
About 3,300 men, yep.
Okay.
So he's got his 3,300 veteran troops facing this direction, facing from the east, looking westward. He will smash this third attack by John McCausland. This time, McCausland's Cavaliers falling back through the forming ranks of the Georgia Brigade behind me. Those Georgia troops up there along the Brooks Hill, as they're falling back through the ranks of Clement Evans, Evans would actually call out, mocking his fellow Confederates, telling the men around him, "Come on, Georgians, let's show these cavalrymen how to fight. It's just 100 days, men, and can't stand up to our troops."
You're going to find out in a minute, Evans, that you are wrong.
He's absolutely wrong, but it goes to the point that Confederate forces, even this late in the day, think they're dealing with militia or inexperienced soldiers. Clement Evans is going to lead off the attacks here at Thomas Farm by Confederate infantry. The lines of infantry sweeping across the low ground where the interstate is today, crossing both fences, streams, and being disrupted by some of the very large piles of straw and hay that are being prepped for harvest out here in these fields. The Confederate attacks will be stymied by Federal skirmishers out here, again, pretty much where the interstate is, but those skirmish lines will be falling back. 3 times Clement Evans is going to attack this position here on Thomas Farm. 3 times his lines will be knocked back. Clement Evans himself is twice wounded in this series of attacks. He will be hit in his left arm and actually in his breast. He will have his sewing kit, which was in his breast pocket, hit, blowing numerous sewing needles into his flesh.
This is a story that every time Matt tells it to me, my skin begins to crawl because these needles stay in his body for the rest of his life.
That's right.
You get a bad cough, I have stabbed myself internally. There are so many things that we discuss about this war that consistently just turn my guts topsy-turvy, but the needles being blasted into this man's essentially lung, potentially the heart, things like that. Dear God. Now, before we continue, Matt, I wanted to sort of just highlight the theme that we've been focusing on about this unwillingness to commit to a general engagement. Sounds like we are committing to a general engagement at this point in the fight because we are. But there's a secondary theme under that I don't want to commit where they just think that they are going to consistently brush off what's in front of them. And what I find both amusing and disheartening because people's real lives are being expended in this mentality is our story just on July 9th started about 6 o'clock in the morning. Way over at the Jug Bridge, right? There was a repulse of the Baltimore Pike that caused them to shift their plan of movement over to the Georgetown Pike. That did not go well either. So now they have begun this need to cross. And we went from 6 o'clock in the morning to right about what time are we at now, Matt?
We're pushing 3:30, and that's important because daylight is burning. And with the repulse of Clement Evans' attacks, we're now going to begin, as Pat said, a direct attack on Thomas Farm with an attack in echelon. So Evans' brigade has gone forward. Now we're going to have York's brigade with the Louisianans as we move over this direction, passing right across this landscape in front of us here from Worthington, across these fields, driving in towards the Federal line. Out to the north of us, close to the river, is Brigadier General Terry's brigade of Virginia troops. The old Stonewall Brigade, the remains of that is in amongst these soldiers. The Louisianans and the Virginians will find success in driving back that particular brigade of Brickett's division. They're going to actually push them across these fields to the rising ground that we see behind Pat here. There they are going to hold once more. With the falling back of that brigade, the other half of Brickett's division that's fighting right in here would be forced to withdraw as well. They're going to fall back through the Thomas Farm buildings, which is right over here to my left, and they would fall back to what is today Araby Church Road.
Spin around so you can see the Thomas property, just like with the Best Farm, where Rangers men literally went through the space and occupied the buildings. Not a lot of building occupation happening, but we are talking about U.S. troops moving directly through the lands that we're looking at here. Are the Thomases in their home?
They are. The Thomases are actually hiding in the cellar. Now, Christian Kiefer Thomas, his wife, at least 2 of his daughters, as well as some of the Gambrill family, is hiding in the cellar of the Thomas Farm. They have some of their enslaved also with them in the Thomas Farm cellar, and they've got at least a dozen hunting dogs in the cellar with them. So there's a lot of folks hiding down in that little cellar. The Thomas Farm itself, its actual buildings, will become an intricate part of the battlefield, with soldiers literally fighting through the structure of the main house. The house will be hit multiple times during the fighting, especially as these federal troops are falling back, eventually to their final line of defense around what is today Araby Church Road.